Trading conditions for businesses have worsened as sale volumes and new orders plunged. Well, that's according to Business Chamber SACCI's Trade Activity Index for July, which declined by 4 points to 48. Now, the index is 10 points lower compared to a year ago. To add to that gloomy picture, the Manufacturing Circle survey says the sector had a fragile second quarter in terms of business conditions. The latest survey points to uncertainty in the labour market, elevated wage and input costs, and competition from imported goods. Well, Economist Dr Iraj Abedian, Chief Executive of Pan-African Investment and Research Services, analysed the survey data and compiled the report. He joins me now. Iraj, as always, thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
All right, so consumers are finding it hard at the moment. The environment economically is not good enough for them. We have wages rising. Just how bad is it for a manufacturer at the moment?
It's pretty tough, as you can imagine, based on the survey that we've done in the second quarter. And Devon, this survey has been going for 3 years now. And this past quarter has been possibly the most negative of all the surveys that we've had. Most importantly, the confidence, the optimism, if you prefer, amongst those who participated is at the lowest. Not only wages are rising, but labor disruption is adding costs to doing business. Electricity is not secure and reliable and is going up. Municipalities are not reliable. So all around, the manufacturers are having a fairly tough time. Of course, the currency has depreciated for many of the manufacturers, not for all of them. For those who are exporting, that's providing a little bit of relief. Interestingly enough, Africa is now rising as a very promising and robust export destination. So a lot of our manufacturers are increasingly gearing themselves up to benefit from the rise of Africa.
But these manufacturers are asking for that structure and policy change on the ground to facilitate it. We have the government intervening here, calling for local procurement at these manufacturers to give them a boost. There's a program in place. Are manufacturers benefiting from that procurement program?
In terms of the survey that we've done, not only in the second quarter of 2014, but over the past 5 quarters, consistently the manufacturers are saying, we are hoping, we believe we can participate, we should be part of this supply to mega projects that's happening. But in actual fact, 82% of them, as of the last quarter that we surveyed, do not benefit at all. So they have the hope, but in reality, they don't benefit.
Why is that?
I think there are blockages here. There are things that government says and there are things that government does. And that there is no consistency in what they say, what they hope, and what they do. For example, municipalities in a number of their projects are caught supplying very items that South African manufacturers do produce, and yet somebody gets a deal, the tender goes out, some BBE arrangements, and they get it, and the next thing is it's imported from China or from South Korea or somewhere else.
Yeah, and that brings us to the question of jobs. I mean, we want to see a healthy manufacturing sector, the second biggest sector in terms of contribution to GDP. What does it look like if those are the conditions on the jobs front?
Well, jobs are lost. Since last year, since second quarter of 2013, a year ago, 93,000 jobs have been lost in this business. So it's a huge loss of job opportunities. And these are not also low-paid jobs. These are exactly the type of jobs that, from a political, social point of view, we want to promote. And yet, because there is no coordination in policy space in government, and there isn't really operational relationship between the manufacturing sector and policymakers, they're talking over each other's heads, so to speak. Jobs are lost.
Where is it working, Iraj? I mean, if one just looks at a sector in manufacturing, for example, the automotive manufacturing sector, there are some success stories in there. What works there that, you know, can be applied to the rest of the sector?
Interesting you mentioned auto manufacturing. It has worked, it's been a successful story, and yet this time government gets it right, the unions undermine it. So NUMSA goes and disrupts the supply chain for a serious period of time, bearing in mind that the successful stories globally these days is part of a global manufacturing system. In other words, you're supplying on a long-term basis into a global production. If there is uncertainty, if there is disruption, you lose that contract. You become an unreliable supplier, and therefore jobs become vulnerable. So there is also an issue of labor disruption If policy is right, labor disrupts it. If labor doesn't reply, policy is wrong. We need to bring the stakeholders for the sake of national interest together.
Okay, and before I let you go, I mean, just shifting focus a bit, I know you haven't had a chance to look at those mining output numbers. Mining output for June coming in earlier today, minus 5.7%. It was sitting at minus 6.4% in May. We know that was the strike period. I mean, these are dreadful numbers. We have a mining Lekotla happening at the moment. Do you have faith in the topics being discussed there to improve these figures?
Yeah, I've been following the mining sector and mining Lekotla, both of them. The issues are real, what's being discussed. But the spirit in which that's being discussed is not business-like. It's about airing frustrations as opposed to saying, these are the practical ways that we're going to, now that we've heard what our problems are, we're going to deal with it. For example, on the community side, there is a lot of failed expectations, frustrations. Because government doesn't deal with the housing, mining companies commit themselves to social labor plan. 3, 4, 5, 10 years goes by, they haven't delivered. Government hasn't got the capacity to monitor those things, and nobody wants to take responsibility for it. Communities in the meantime suffer. So the issues that are being discussed are real issues, but the solutions that are being put forward, they remain at the political slogans and expressions of commitments. Another 5 years will go by, we're still being on the same spot. Remember, these issues are not new. We've known them for now 15, 16 years, openly discussing them.
Iraj Abedian, economist, thanks very much indeed for talking to us.
Thank you.